The first time Harper Knight met Elias Moretti, she thought he was exactly what he claimed to be. A successful businessman with persistent insomnia who'd been referred to her sleep therapy practice by his primary care physician, and she had absolutely no reason to question this narrative even when he showed up for his initial consultation 15 minutes early, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, flanked by two men who looked more like security than assistants and who waited outside her modest Brooklyn office with the kind of alert stillness that suggested they were trained for violence because Harper had treated wealthy clients before and eccentric behavior came with the territory. So when Elias settled into the chair across from her desk with a smile that was somehow both charming and unsettling, and said in a voice that carried an edge she couldn't quite identify, "I've been told you're very good at helping people who can't sleep. I'm hoping you can work miracles because I haven't had a full night's rest in 5 years." She simply smiled back professionally and opened her intake form, completely unaware that the man sitting across from her controlled half the organized crime in the northeastern United States, that the business associates he'd mentioned losing sleep over were people who'd disappeared when they'd crossed him, that his insomnia stemmed not from stress, but from the kind of choices that haunted people at 3 a.m. when darkness made it impossible to ignore what you'd become, and that her cheerful professional warmth, treating him like he was just another client instead of someone whose name made grown men go pale, was the most intriguing thing that had happened to him in a decade, which meant that Harper Knight, 28-year-old sleep therapist who believed in science and kindness and the fundamental goodness of people, had just unknowingly caught the complete attention of a man who was absolutely none of those things, and her life would never be the same. "My name is Harper Knight, and I help people sleep. I know that sounds simple, almost trivial, but sleep is fundamental to everything else in life. When you can't sleep, everything falls apart. Your health deteriorates. Your relationships suffer. Your ability to function, to think clearly, to be yourself, all of it crumbles. I'm a sleep therapist and researcher. I have a doctorate in sleep medicine from Johns Hopkins. I run a small private practice in Brooklyn where I work with clients who have chronic insomnia, sleep disorders, circadian rhythm issues. I use a combination of cognitive behavioral therapy, sleep hygiene education, and in some cases, carefully monitored sleep restriction protocols. It's not glamorous. It doesn't pay particularly well compared to what I could make in a hospital or research facility, but I love it. Love helping people reclaim something as basic and essential as rest. Most of my clients are middle-aged professionals, people whose stress has caught up with them, whose anxiety manifests at night when there's nothing to distract from it, new parents who can't sleep even when the baby finally does, people whose bodies have forgotten how to rest. I treat them with patience, evidence-based methods, and the genuine belief that everyone deserves to sleep peacefully, which is exactly how I approached Elias Moretti when he showed up at my office on a Tuesday afternoon in October. He'd called 3 days earlier, said he'd been referred by Dr. Chen, one of the primary care physicians I worked with regularly, said he had persistent insomnia, asked if I had availability. His voice on the phone had been pleasant, professional, nothing that set off alarm bells. So when he arrived, early, which I appreciated, I greeted him with my standard warm professionalism. "Mr. Moretti?" I stood to shake his hand. "I'm Dr. Knight. Please have a seat." He was younger than most of my clients, maybe late 30s, tall, fit, the kind of handsome that was almost distracting. Sharp features, dark hair touched with silver at the temples, pulled back in a sleek low bun, eyes that were an unusual shade of amber, the expensive suit I'd noticed, a watch that was understated but clearly cost a fortune, intricate black and gray tattoos visible at his neck above the collar and on his hands, sophisticated ink that suggested a story I didn't know, and something else, an intensity, a sense of controlled power that radiated from him even sitting still. But wealthy men often had that presence. I'd learned not to be intimidated by it. "Dr. Knight." His handshake was firm, brief. "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice." "Of course." I gestured to the comfortable chair across from my desk. "Dr. Chen mentioned you've been dealing with insomnia for quite some time. 5 years. He settled into the chair with easy grace. "Maybe longer. It's gotten to the point where I can't remember what a full night's rest feels like." I made notes. "And what have you tried so far?" "Everything Dr. Chen suggested. Sleep hygiene, regular schedule, no screens before bed, exercise, meditation. Nothing works." He smiled slightly. "I'm either very stubborn or very broken. Possibly both." "You're neither," I said firmly. "Insomnia is a medical condition. It's not a personal failing, and it's almost always treatable with the right approach." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise? Interest? You sound very confident about that. Because I am. I met his gaze directly. I've worked with hundreds of clients over the past 6 years. The vast majority of them see significant improvement. Many achieve complete resolution. You're not broken, Mr. Moretti. You just haven't found the right treatment yet. Elias, he said. Please. Mr. Moretti makes me feel old. Elias then. I smiled. And you can call me Harper if you're comfortable with that. I find the therapy works better when it doesn't feel overly formal. Harper. The way he said my name made it sound different. Deliberate. I like that. Direct. No pretense. That's generally how I operate. I clicked my pen. So let's start with some basics. Walk me through a typical night. What time do you try to sleep? What happens when you do? He described a pattern I'd seen before. Lying awake for hours. Mind racing. When sleep finally came, it was shallow and broken. Waking repeatedly. Never feeling rested. And what's your mind racing about? I asked gently. When you're lying there awake, what keeps you up? He was quiet for a moment. Work. Decisions I've made. People I'm responsible for. Things I can't undo. Are you in a high-stress profession? You could say that. A slight smile. I manage operations that require constant attention. The kind where mistakes have serious consequences. That sounds challenging. I made notes. The good news is that stress-related insomnia responds very well to cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, CBTI. We'll work on managing those racing thoughts, developing better sleep associations, and rebuilding your body's natural sleep drive. And you think this will actually work? He asked it seriously. Because I've tried a lot of things. Spent a lot of time and money on solutions that didn't solve anything. I think it has an excellent chance of working, I said honestly. But it requires commitment. This isn't a quick fix. It's a process. Usually 8 to 12 weeks of weekly sessions, homework between sessions, following protocols even when they're uncomfortable. Can you commit to that? Yes. No hesitation. If you think it'll work, I'll do whatever you recommend. Good. I smiled. Then let's get started. If you're already hooked on this story, don't forget to like this video right now. Drop a comment telling me if you think Harper should be more suspicious of Elias or if her professional trust is appropriate. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what happens when she discovers who he really is. Hit that notification bell. The next 8 weeks developed a rhythm that felt almost normal. Elias came to my office every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Always punctual. Always those 2 men waiting outside. Always that expensive suit and careful attention. We worked through standard CBTI protocols. Sleep restriction therapy, limiting his time in bed to match his actual sleep time, then gradually expanding it. Stimulus control, bed only for sleep, no lying awake. Cognitive restructuring, addressing the anxious thoughts that kept him awake. He was a model client, did every homework assignment, kept detailed sleep logs, reported honestly even when the results weren't what he wanted, and he was pleasant, friendly even. We developed an easy rapport. He asked about my research, seemed genuinely interested in the science behind sleep, made dry, witty observations that made me laugh. You know what's strange? He said during week 4. I've spent ridiculous amounts on supposed solutions. Sleep consultants, specialists, even a sleep retreat in Switzerland that cost more than most people's cars. None of them helped. But you, with your modest office and evidence-based approach and refusal to promise miracles, you're actually making progress. Evidence-based medicine tends to work better than expensive placebos, I said. Though I'm glad the Switzerland retreat didn't bankrupt you. It didn't. Amusement in his voice. I have resources. So I gathered from the suit. I gestured to his clearly bespoke clothing. Not that I'm judging. Everyone deserves good sleep regardless of income. You really believe that, don't you? He said it like it was novel. That everyone deserves care, kindness, second chances. Of course. I looked at him curiously. Don't you? I used to, he said quietly. Before I learned that most people don't deserve the trust you give them. That kindness is often seen as weakness. That second chances frequently lead to third betrayals. That's a cynical worldview. It's a realistic one. He leaned back. But I'm finding your optimism refreshing. Even if I think you're naive. I'm not naive, I said firmly. I'm hopeful. There's a difference. Naive means ignorant. I'm very aware people can be cruel, selfish, destructive. I just choose to believe they can also be better than their worst moments. And if they prove they can't, then I've lost nothing by giving them the chance. But they've lost the opportunity to prove me wrong. I met his eyes. You, for example. You clearly have some darkness in your past. Some choices you regret. That's why you can't sleep. But you're here, doing the work, trying to be better. That matters. Something shifted in his expression. You don't know anything about my past. No, but I know insomnia. And yours isn't just stress, it's guilt, shame, the kind that comes from doing things you can't undo. I said it gently. I'm not judging, just observing, and offering the same thing I offer everyone. Belief that you can heal if you're willing to do the work. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, you're playing with fire, Harper. Excuse me? Trusting people so easily. Believing everyone deserves kindness. Seeing good in people who've proven they're not. His voice was soft but serious. That's a dangerous way to live. Eventually you'll trust the wrong person and it'll cost you. Maybe. I shrugged. But living in constant suspicion and cynicism costs too. I'd rather risk being hurt occasionally than live in fear constantly. Spoken like someone who's never been truly hurt. Spoken like someone who refuses to let being hurt define her. I corrected. I'm not some sheltered innocent, Elias. I've been betrayed, disappointed, hurt by people I trusted. But I'm still here, still believing people can be better. Because the alternative is becoming bitter and closed off, and that's not who I want to be. He smiled, actually smiled, genuine and almost sad. You're remarkable, you know that. I'm persistent, I said. Now, let's talk about your sleep logs from this week. You're showing improvement, but we need to address the 3 a.m. wakings. He let me change the subject, but something had shifted between us, something I couldn't quite name. By week 8, his sleep was measurably better. Still not perfect, but solid improvement. 6 hours most nights. Some nights even 7. This is excellent progress. I reviewed his latest logs. How do you feel? Functional, he said. For the first time in years, I wake up and don't feel like I've been hit by a truck. Good. That's the goal. I smiled. We'll continue for another few weeks, consolidate these gains, and then you'll be graduated from my care. And if I don't want to be graduated? He asked it lightly, but something in his eyes was serious. Then you're trying to avoid something besides sleep, I said gently. This is a therapeutic relationship, Elias. It has boundaries, an endpoint. You don't keep seeing a sleep therapist when your sleep is fixed just because you enjoy the conversation. Even if the conversation is the most honest one I have all week. The vulnerability in his voice caught me off guard. You don't have other people you can talk honestly with? No. Simple. Stark. The people in my life fall into 2 categories. Those who fear me too much to be honest, and those who want something from me. You're the only person who treats me like I'm just a person, not someone to be feared or used. Just someone who can't sleep and needs help, because that's what you are, I said. To me, you're a client with insomnia. That's all I know about you. That's all that matters in this context. And that's exactly why these sessions matter. He leaned forward. Because you don't know anything else. Don't see me as anything else. It's the only hour each week where I get to be just Elias. Not everything that name means to everyone else. What does your name mean to everyone else? I asked curiously. He smiled. Bitter. Things you're better off not knowing. More warnings. I raised an eyebrow. You keep telling me I'm playing with fire, that I trust too easily, that knowing about you would be dangerous. But you never actually say what the danger is. Because if I did, you'd stop seeing me as just a client, he said quietly. You'd see what I actually am, and I'm not ready to lose the only honest relationship I have, even if it's just professional. Elias. I put down my pen. Whatever you think you are, whatever you've done, it doesn't change the therapeutic relationship. I don't judge clients, I help them sleep. That's all. You say that now. He stood. But you don't actually know what you're saying. Then tell me. I challenged. Stop with the cryptic warnings and just tell me what's so terrible about you that I should be afraid. No. He moved toward the door. Because I'm selfish enough to want to keep this. Keep being just your client who can't sleep instead of everything else. Even if it's temporary. Even if I'm lying by omission. I want this. Want you looking at me like I'm someone worth helping instead of someone worth avoiding. You are worth helping, I said firmly. Everyone is. See? He looked back at me. That's exactly what I mean. You believe that. And I'm not ready to be the one who proves you wrong. He left, and I sat there wondering what the hell had just happened. Week 10 brought a complication I should have seen coming, but somehow missed entirely. We were reviewing his sleep logs when he said casually, I'd like to take you to dinner. I looked up. What? Dinner. He said it like it was simple. As a thank you. You've helped me more than anyone else has in 5 years. I'd like to express my appreciation properly. That's kind, but unnecessary. I kept my voice professional. I'm just doing my job. I know, which is why I want to thank you. He leaned back, Harper, I'm not asking you on a date. I'm asking to buy you a meal as a gesture of gratitude. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing that crosses professional boundaries. Just dinner. I don't typically socialize with clients. I won't be a client much longer, he pointed out. You said yourself I'm nearly graduated. A few more weeks and the therapeutic relationship ends. Then we're just two people who know each other. Two people who met in a professional context. Two people who've spent 10 weeks having honest conversations. He corrected. Look, if it makes you uncomfortable, I understand. I'm not trying to pressure you. But I'd genuinely like to thank you properly. And selfishly, I'd like to have one more honest conversation before I go back to my regular life where nobody talks to me like I'm human. The way he said it got to me. That loneliness. That desire for simple human connection. One dinner, I said against my better judgment. Somewhere public. Not romantic. Just colleagues having a meal. Agreed. He smiled. And it was genuine. Warm. Thank you, Harper. The restaurant he chose was nice but not ostentatious. Italian. Cozy. The kind of place where you could have a conversation without shouting over noise. He was already there when I arrived. Stood when he saw me. Pulled out my chair with old-fashioned courtesy. You look lovely. He said it simply. Though you always look professional and put together. This is just different. Nice different. I'd dressed carefully. Not date clothing, but nice. A simple dress. Minimal jewelry. Wanting to look like I'd made an effort without suggesting this was more than it was. Thank you. I settled into my chair. This is a nice place. Though it's owned by someone I know, he said. The food is excellent, and it's private enough we can talk without being overheard. We ordered, made small talk. It felt surprisingly natural, like we were just two people having dinner instead of therapist and client. Can I ask you something? He said once our meals arrived. Personal. You can decline. You can ask, I said. I reserve the right not to answer. Why do you do this work? He gestured vaguely. You could make more money doing research. Hospital work. Why run a small private practice helping people sleep? Because sleep matters, I said simply. And because I'm good at it. I like helping people with something fundamental, something that affects every other aspect of their lives. Research is important, but it's distant. This is immediate, personal. I see people improve, see them reclaim their lives. That matters to me. Even when they're difficult? Especially then. I smiled. The difficult ones are usually the most rewarding when they finally break through. Like me. You weren't difficult, I said honestly. You were committed, honest, willing to do the work. That makes all the difference. I wasn't always like that, he said quietly, committed to doing things the right way, following rules, trusting process. I used to take shortcuts, force outcomes, do whatever necessary to get what I wanted. What changed? I got tired. He looked at his wine. Tired of the person I was becoming. Tired of only being able to sleep when I was too exhausted to think. Tired of looking in the mirror and not recognizing myself. So I started trying to be different, better. It's slow, hard. Most days I'm not sure I'm succeeding, but I'm trying. That's all anyone can do, I said gently. Try to be better than yesterday. You make it sound simple. It is simple, I said. Not easy, but simple. Wake up every day and choose to be slightly better than you were. Make one good choice, then another. Eventually those choices add up. And when you make bad choices, when you fail, then you start again the next day, I said. Perfection isn't the goal. Progress is. Before we continue, I need to ask you something. Where are you watching this story from? What country? Drop your location in the comments right now. And tell me, do you think Harper should be more suspicious of Elias? Is she being naive or appropriately professional? Would you have agreed to dinner? If you want more stories with dangerous men pretending to be normal, therapists who don't know who they're treating, and warnings that go ignored until it's too late, you absolutely must subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Turn on all notifications so you never miss when I drop a new story. Seriously, subscribe right now. Then let's get back to Harper and Elias. We talked for 3 hours, long after the plates were cleared. The kind of conversation that felt effortless, natural, and dangerous, though I didn't recognize it yet. When he drove me home, insisted on it, said his driver was already there. I made him drop me 2 blocks from my building. Professional boundaries, I told myself, not wanting him to know exactly where I lived. Thank you for dinner, I said, and for being such a good client. I'm proud of the progress you've made. Thank you for seeing me as human, he said quietly, for treating me like I was worth the effort. You are worth it, I said. Everyone is. He smiled. Sad again. You keep saying that. Someday you're going to meet someone who proves you wrong. Maybe. I agreed. But it won't be you. I went inside thinking that was true. Thinking I knew him. Thinking he was just a lonely businessman with insomnia who'd found some help and some human connection. I had no idea how catastrophically wrong I was. The truth came crashing down 3 days later. I was at my favorite coffee shop near my office when I saw it. A newspaper someone had left on the table. Front page. Photo that made my blood go cold. Elias. My client, Elias. With a headline that read, "Organized crime figure Elias Moretti survives assassination attempt." I grabbed the paper with shaking hands. Read words that couldn't be real. Elias Moretti, alleged head of the Northeastern Syndicate. Connections to organized crime spanning 15 years. Survived targeted attack last night. Authorities believe rival factions. History of violence. Controls operations including... It went on and on, detailing a life that bore no resemblance to the man I knew. The man who came to my office every Tuesday. Who did his homework diligently. Who'd taken me to dinner and talked about trying to be better. That man was a lie. This man, this criminal, this dangerous person, was real. And I'd invited him into my office, into my life, had dinner with him, told him I believed everyone deserved kindness. I was going to be sick. My phone rang. His number. I stared at it. Let it ring through to voicemail. It rang again, and again. Finally, a text. "Harper, I know you've seen the news. Please let me explain. I'm outside your office. I'll wait as long as it takes." I should have called the police. Should have gotten a restraining order. Should have done anything except what I actually did, which was walk to my office and find him standing outside exactly as he'd said. Those two men flanking him. People giving them wide berth. He saw me. Relief washed over his face. "Harper, don't." I kept my distance. "Don't say my name like we're friends. Like you didn't lie to me for 10 weeks. "I never lied," he said quietly. "I just didn't tell you everything. You let me believe you were a normal client. A businessman with insomnia." "I am a businessman with insomnia," he said. "Everything I told you about not sleeping was true. Everything about trying to be better was true. The only thing I didn't tell you was what I do, what I've done." "You're a criminal." I kept my voice down, but fury vibrated through it. "You control organized crime. People are dead because of you." "Yes, no denial. All of that is true. And I kept it from you because I knew if you knew, you'd look at me exactly how you're looking at me now. Like I'm dangerous. Like I'm someone to fear instead of someone to help." "Because you are dangerous." I stepped back. "Those warnings. You're playing with fire. You were warning me about you. I was trying to protect you," he said. "By keeping distance. By not telling you who I was. By warning you away from trusting me too much. You should have told me the truth from the beginning. If I had, you never would have treated me," he said simply. "Never would have looked at me like I was worth helping. Never would have had those conversations or made that progress or had dinner with me. You would have refused to see me the second you knew. And I couldn't give that up. Couldn't give up the only place where I got to be just someone who needed help instead of someone people feared. So you lied by omission?" "Yes." He didn't flinch from it. "Because I'm selfish. Because I wanted what you were offering. Belief that I could be better. Treatment like I was human. Conversation without agenda. I took that even though I knew I was deceiving you. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this." My voice broke. "You put me in danger, made me complicit. I've been treating a criminal for 10 weeks. You've been treating someone with insomnia," he corrected gently. "That's all. You didn't do anything wrong. You helped someone who needed it. I need you to leave." I backed toward my office door. "Don't come back. Don't contact me. Whatever therapeutic relationship we had is over. Harper." "I mean it, Elias." I met his eyes. "Stay away from me. I don't want anything to do with you or your world." I went inside, locked the door, and tried very hard not to fall apart completely. 3 weeks passed. Radio silence from Elias. I should have been relieved. Should have been grateful he'd respected my boundaries. Instead, I was conflicted. Because the truth was more complicated than I wanted it to be. Yes, he'd lied by omission. Yes, he was involved in things I found morally reprehensible. Yes, finding out had been a betrayal. But also, he'd been telling the truth about trying to be better, about the insomnia stemming from guilt, about wanting to change. The Elias I'd known for 10 weeks hadn't been entirely fake. Parts of him had been real. The vulnerability, the loneliness, the desire for connection without fear. And despite everything, despite knowing what he was, I couldn't quite make myself stop caring about that person, which made me either very compassionate or very stupid, probably both. I was working late in my office when the knock came. After hours. I should have ignored it. I opened the door. Elias stood there. No guards this time. Just him, looking tired. "I know you told me to stay away," he said. "And I tried. I really did. But I can't sleep again. And you're the only person who's ever helped. So I'm asking, professionally, if you'll see me one more time, just to talk through what's happening, what I should do. You should see someone else." "There is no one else," he said quietly. "You're the only therapist I've ever trusted. The only person I've been honest with in years. I know I don't deserve your help. No, I deceived you. But I'm asking anyway, because I don't know what else to do. I should have said no, should have closed the door. One session," I heard myself say. "Strictly professional. You talk, I listen. Then you find another therapist. Thank you." The relief in his voice was palpable. He came in, sat in the familiar chair, looked at me with those amber eyes. "I haven't slept more than 2 hours a night since you told me to leave," he said. "The guilt that was starting to ease? It's back with reinforcements, because now I'm not just dealing with the things I've done. I'm dealing with hurting you, deceiving you, taking something that was helping and destroying it because I was too selfish to be honest." "Why weren't you?" I asked. "Honest from the start? Because I wanted what you offered. Simple. Honest. For 10 weeks I got to be just Elias. Just someone with insomnia who was trying to sleep better. Not Moretti. Not the person people fear. Just someone worthy of help. That was addictive, and I didn't want to give it up, even knowing it was built on deception. Even then, he didn't deny it. I told myself I wasn't lying, that everything I said about wanting to be better was true, that the insomnia was real, that I deserved help for that regardless of what else I'd done. But I knew I was deceiving you by not telling you everything. And I did it anyway, because you're selfish. Yes, he met my eyes. I'm selfish, dangerous, morally compromised. Everything you think I am. But I'm also someone who's trying to be better, who genuinely wants to change, who found in you the first person in years who made me believe change was possible. And I didn't want to lose that. I was quiet for a long moment. The person I was treating, the one who did his homework and talked honestly and wanted to sleep better, was that real? Or was that performance? It was real, he said immediately. All of it. The wanting to change, the insomnia from guilt, the appreciation for being treated like a person. None of that was fake. I just left out the context that would have made you refuse to see me. The context being that you're a criminal. The context being that I control operations most people find morally reprehensible, that I've made choices that led to people being hurt, that I'm exactly the kind of person you shouldn't trust. He leaned forward. But here's what's also true. I'm transitioning out, divesting from the worst operations, building legitimate businesses, trying to become someone who can sleep at night because they're not haunted by their choices. It's slow, complicated, but I'm doing it. And you helped. You made me believe it was worth trying. I helped a criminal become slightly less criminal. You helped a person become slightly more human. He corrected gently. That matters. At least it does to me. Why? I asked. Why does it matter so much that one sleep therapist treated you with basic human decency? Because nobody else does. Simple. Stark. People fear me. Use me. Want things from me. But nobody just sees me. Talks to me like I'm a person instead of a threat or a resource. You did. For 10 weeks you treated me like I was just someone who needed help. And that was the most valuable thing anyone's given me in years. I looked at him. This man who was dangerous and broken and trying. Who'd lied, but also told truth. Who'd hurt me, but also trusted me. I can't treat you anymore, I said quietly. The professional relationship is too compromised, but I can recommend someone. I don't want someone else, he said. I don't know what I want, except that talking to you helps. Being around you helps. You make me want to be better instead of just different. That's not a therapeutic dynamic anymore. I know. He stood, which is why I'm not asking for therapy. I'm asking if we can just talk sometimes. As people, not therapist and client, just two people who have honest conversations. That's a terrible idea. Probably. He almost smiled. But so was treating me in the first place, and you did that for 10 weeks. Because I didn't know what you were. And now you do, he said quietly. So if you agree to this, to talking to me, spending time with me, whatever this becomes, it's with full knowledge. No deception. Just conscious choice. Choice to do what exactly? Choice to see where honesty leads, he said. I'm not asking you to date me. Not asking you to be part of my world. Just asking if you're willing to be in my life in whatever capacity works. Because you help me be better, and I'm selfish enough to want to keep that. I should have said no. Should have recognized this was dangerous in every possible way. One coffee. I said. Public place. We talk. I decide if this is something I can do. Then we figure out boundaries. Agreed. He said. Thank you, Harper. Don't thank me yet. I said. I might decide this is too complicated and walk away. You might. He agreed. But I don't think you will. Because you believe people can change, and you want to see if I actually can. He wasn't wrong. Which was either going to save us both or destroy me completely. The coffee happened 2 days later. Then another. Then dinner. Then regular meetings that felt less like therapy and more like something else. He was honest now. Brutally so. Told me about his world. The operations he controlled. The transition he was attempting. The complications involved. I asked questions. Challenged him. Made him explain why he thought he could become someone different. Because you believe I can, he said one evening. And somehow that makes it feel possible. I believe everyone can change. I corrected. That's not special. It is to me, he said quietly. Nobody else in my life believes I can be better. They either benefit from me staying exactly as I am, or they're waiting for me to fail so they can take over. You're the only person who wants me to succeed at becoming someone different. That's because I'm not invested in who you were, I said. I only know who you're trying to be. And who's that? Someone better than yesterday, I said simply. That's all anyone needs to be. Over 6 months, our relationship evolved into something I couldn't quite define. Not professional, not quite romantic, something in between. He showed me parts of his life, the legitimate businesses he was building, the operations he was divesting from, the people he was trying to help transition out of the life he was leaving. It wasn't simple redemption. It was messy, complicated, full of setbacks and moral compromises I didn't love. But it was real. He was genuinely trying. And somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing him as a client or a criminal and started seeing him as just Elias, complicated, damaged, trying to be better. The shift happened gradually, conversations getting longer, touches becoming more frequent, his hand on my lower back guiding me through a crowded restaurant, my hand on his arm when he was frustrated, proximity that felt natural. Until one night, standing on my doorstep after dinner, the question became unavoidable. This isn't just friendship anymore, is it? He said quietly. No, I admitted. It's not. And that terrifies you. Yes. Honest. Because you're still who you are. Still involved in things I don't agree with. Still dangerous. Letting this become more than it is means accepting all of that. I'm not asking you to accept it, he said. I'm asking if you can accept me while I'm actively trying to change it. That's a lot to ask. I know. He cupped my face gently. But I'm asking anyway. Because you've become the most important person in my life. Because you make me want to be better in ways I've never wanted before. Because I'm in love with you and I can't pretend I'm not anymore. The admission should have shocked me. Should have made me step back. Instead, it felt inevitable. Like we'd been building toward this for months. I love you too, I said quietly, which is probably the stupidest thing I've ever admitted. But it's true. Then let's be stupid together, he said. Let me be with you. Let me show you I can become someone worthy of you. He kissed me. And I let him. Let myself fall into something that was probably a terrible idea but felt more right than anything else in my life. But getting to that point hadn't been the smooth journey those words suggested. The 2 years between our first kiss and standing in his legitimate restaurant had been filled with challenges that tested everything we'd built. The first major crisis came 3 months into our relationship. I'd known intellectually that his transition would be complicated. That severing ties with criminal operations wasn't as simple as deciding to quit. But knowing it intellectually was different from experiencing it viscerally. He came to my apartment at 2 a.m. I'd been asleep, woke to pounding on my door that sent adrenaline spiking through my system. I looked through the peephole. Elias, face tight with something that looked like pain. What happened? I opened the door. He was inside before I could step back. I need you to listen to something. His voice was controlled but strained. And then I need you to decide if you can still be with me. My stomach dropped. What did you do? Nothing. Yet. He paced my small living room like a caged animal. But I'm about to. And I need you to know before I do it. Because if you can't accept it, I need to know now. Before I'm in too deep to walk away from you. Elias, you're scaring me. Good. He stopped pacing. Looked at me with eyes that were dark with something dangerous. You should be scared. Because what I'm about to tell you is who I actually am when things get complicated. Not the man who comes to dinner and talks about building legitimate businesses. The other one. The one you've never actually seen. I sat down slowly. Tell me. One of my former associates decided my transition makes me weak, vulnerable. His voice was clinical. He's been systematically targeting the people I've helped get out, hurting them, threatening their families, making it clear that leaving my organization comes with consequences. 3 people hospitalized this week. One of them might not make it. My hand covered my mouth. Oh God, I can stop it, he said flatly. I have the resources, the connections, the leverage. I can make this person disappear, permanently. Solve the problem the way I used to solve problems. Quick, efficient, permanent. No. The word came out strangled. You can't. That's exactly what you're trying to stop being. I know. His hands clenched into fists. Which is why I'm here. Because every instinct I have is screaming to handle this the old way. To protect the people I'm responsible for by eliminating the threat. But you believe I can be better. So I'm asking, how do I be better when being better means people I care about get hurt? I stood, moved to him, took his hands, even though they were shaking with restrained violence. You handle it the hard way. Legal channels, authorities, building a case. That takes time. His voice broke. Time during which more people get hurt. How is that better? How is letting people suffer while I build a legal case morally superior to stopping the threat immediately? Because the ends don't justify the means, I said quietly. Because becoming what you're trying to leave behind, even for good reasons, means you haven't actually changed. You've just found better justifications. So I let people get hurt. No, you protect them differently. I squeezed his hands. Security, safe houses, resources. You have money and connections that are legitimate. Use those. But don't kill someone. Don't prove that when things get hard, you revert to what's easy. You're asking me to choose between being good and keeping people safe. I'm asking you to prove you've actually changed. I met his eyes. This is the test, Elias. This is where you decide who you actually are. The man who handles problems with violence, or the man who finds another way even when it's harder. He pulled me close, held me so tight I could barely breathe. What if I make the wrong choice? What if I do it your way and someone dies because I wasn't fast enough, wasn't ruthless enough? Then we deal with that together. I said into his chest. But at least you'll still be someone I recognize. Someone who tried to do the right thing, even when it cost you. He did it the hard way. Hired security for everyone at risk, gathered evidence, built a case, worked with authorities he'd spent years avoiding. It took 6 weeks. 6 weeks during which I watched him struggle daily with the choice not to revert, not to handle it the old way. And when the threat was finally neutralized, arrested, prosecuted, put away legally, I saw something in Elias I'd never seen before. Pride, not in the outcome, in himself, for choosing difficult over easy. I almost didn't. He told me that night. Almost said fuck it and did it the old way a dozen times. But you didn't, because you believed I wouldn't, he said quietly, and I couldn't be the one to prove you wrong. The second major challenge came a year in. I'd been largely separate from his business dealings, knew they existed but didn't see them directly. That changed when he asked me to attend an event, a charity gala. He was donating substantially to a cause I cared about, funding sleep research for underserved communities. I want you there, he said, as my partner, not hiding what we are. Your world is going to be there, I said carefully. People from your past, people who know what you were. Yes, he didn't deny it. And I want them to see that I've changed, that I'm building something different, that the woman I love isn't part of that world, but is part of my world. That's a lot of pressure. I know. He cupped my face, which is why I'm asking, not demanding. If it's too much, I understand. But Harper, I'm tired of keeping you separate. Tired of having parts of my life you can't see. I want integration, want everything connected, want you to be part of all of it, not just the clean parts. I went, wore a dress he'd had made for me, elegant, sophisticated, nothing like my usual practical wardrobe. Let him introduce me to people whose names I recognized from news reports, and I watched something interesting happen. People who'd approached him with fear softened when they saw how he was with me. Gentle, attentive, openly affectionate in a way that was apparently completely foreign to the man they'd known. He's different with you, a woman said to me during a quiet moment. Older, elegant. Someone Elias had introduced as a former business associate who'd also transitioned out. I've known Elias Moretti for 15 years. Never saw him smile genuinely until tonight. You did that. He did that himself, I said. I just believed he could. Don't underestimate that. She said seriously, "Belief is powerful, especially for men who've spent their lives being feared instead of loved. You gave him something to become instead of just something to stop being. That matters more than you know." The conversation stayed with me, made me realize that what I'd thought was just supporting someone's change was actually providing something more fundamental, a reason to change, a vision of who he could become that was more appealing than who he'd been. The final test came 18 months in. His sister reached out, a sister I hadn't known existed, who'd cut contact with him years ago when his criminal involvement became undeniable. "She wants to meet you," he told me, voice carefully neutral, "to see if what she's heard is true, if I've actually changed, or if I'm just good at pretending." "What did you tell her?" "That I'd ask you," he said, "because this isn't just about me anymore. This is about us, and I won't put you in a situation that makes you uncomfortable just to prove something to my sister." "Of course I'll meet her," I said. "She's your family." "She was my family," he corrected quietly. "She walked away from me 5 years ago, told me she couldn't watch me become someone she didn't recognize, couldn't be associated with what I was doing. I haven't spoken to her since. And now she's heard I'm changing, that I'm with someone good, that I'm building legitimate businesses and cutting ties with the old world." He looked at me. "She wants to see if it's real, if her brother still exists under the monster." The meeting happened at a cafe, neutral ground. His sister Olivia was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, had Elias's eyes but without the weight of guilt. She studied me carefully. Then Elias, then me again. "You're really with him?" Not a question, an observation. Voluntarily, knowing what he's done. "Yes." I met her gaze directly. "I'm with him knowing everything, and believing he's becoming someone different. My brother doesn't change." She said it sadly. "He makes choices and commits to them completely. When he chose that world, he committed completely. I don't see how he uncommits from that, by committing completely to something else," I said. "He's chosen to change the same way he chose everything else, with absolute focus. It's slow, hard, but it's real." "How do you know?" "Because I see the work. Simple, honest. I see him choose the hard path daily. See him struggle with wanting to revert and not doing it. See him build something legitimate when destroying would be easier. That's not performance. That's transformation." Olivia looked at her brother. "Is she right? Are you actually changing, or are you just better at hiding what you are?" "I'm changing," Elias said quietly, "because I got tired of being someone you couldn't recognize. Someone I couldn't recognize. And because she made me believe different was possible. I need proof. Oh, then watch," he said simply. "Don't trust, don't believe. Just watch. See what I build, who I become, how I live. And in a year, we'll talk again. You can decide then if the change is real." She did watch. Came to the restaurant opening 6 months later. Saw the legitimate business, the employees he'd helped transition, the community he was building. And 8 months after that meeting, she called him. I heard his end of the conversation, heard his voice break when she said, "I want my brother back. Not the one you were, the one you're becoming. Can we try?" "Yes." He said it with tears in his eyes. "We can try." Watching him rebuild that relationship, carefully, honestly, proving through consistency that the change was permanent, showed me something important. This wasn't just about us. It was about him reclaiming all the parts of his life that criminal activity had cost him. Family, peace, self-respect. And I got to be part of that. Got to watch someone fundamentally transform because they'd been given a reason and the belief that transformation was possible. It wasn't a romance novel arc, wasn't clean redemption, was messy, complicated, full of setbacks and struggles and moments of doubt. But it was real, and that mattered more than perfect ever could. 2 years later, standing in that same legitimate restaurant he'd opened, completely clean, completely legal, staffed by people he'd helped transition out of his former world, I watched him interact with employees who respected rather than feared him. The transition had been slow, difficult, full of complications and setbacks, but he'd done it, systematically divested from illegal operations, built something real and legal, became someone who could sleep at night without guilt consuming him, and through it all, I'd been there, supporting, challenging, refusing to let him backslide while also refusing to give up on him. It hadn't been easy. There'd been moments I'd doubted, moments I'd wondered if I was enabling something I shouldn't. But there'd also been moments of watching him choose better when easier was available, watching him help others make the same transition, watching him become someone fundamentally different from who he'd been. "You're staring." He came up behind me, arms around my waist. "What are you thinking about?" "About how far you've come." I turned to face him. about how proud I am of you. I couldn't have done it without you. You could have, I said, but I'm glad you didn't have to. I love you. He said it easily now, openly. Thank you for being stubborn enough to believe I could change. I love you too. I smiled. Thank you for proving me right. He kissed me. And I thought about that first session. About the client I'd thought was just a businessman with insomnia. About the warnings I'd ignored. About playing with fire and somehow not getting burned. Some people said I'd been naive, reckless, stupid for getting involved with someone like him. But they didn't see what I saw, didn't witness the work, the change, the transformation from someone controlled by guilt to someone building something better. I'd played with fire, and instead of getting burned, I'd helped that fire become something constructive instead of destructive. Best professional boundary I'd ever crossed. If you made it to the end of Harper and Elias's complete journey from sleep therapist and secret criminal to partners in transformation, from deception to brutal honesty, from insomnia born of guilt to peace earned through change, from warnings ignored to trust built through action, from criminal empire to legitimate business, from isolation to family reconciliation, from someone feared to someone respected, from guilt-haunted nights to peaceful sleep beside someone who believed in him when no one else did, smash that like button right now. Tell me in the comments, was Harper naive or brave? Should she have walked away when she found out the truth? Do you believe people like Elias can truly change? Would you have given him a second chance after the deception? Could you handle loving someone while they actively work to become someone different? Then you need to subscribe to this channel immediately. Hit that notification bell and turn on all notifications so you never miss another story about dangerous men hiding in plain sight, therapists who see the human beneath the monster, warnings ignored that lead to unexpected love, transformations that prove people can change if someone believes in them enough to stay through the hard parts, and professional boundaries crossed for all the right reasons. Thank you so much for watching Harper and Elias's journey, and I'll see you in the next story. Don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, and turn on that bell. See you soon.